Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. I'm Zach, and one of my goals is to visit every state park here in Iowa. Now I get it. Why would I do such a thing in Iowa of all the states? Iowa doesn't have mountains, it doesn't have canyons, or even a national park. Why Iowa? When you think of Iowa, you think of fields of corn, soy, and pigs and cows and agriculture. But let me tell you, Iowa actually has about 70 different state parks. Now that number will vary depending on what you include as a state park, but that's what I've narrowed it down to. And we've been visiting every state park for the last 3 years. And so I thought it was time to get a video together and to share some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. And so without further ado, let's get started. So tip number 1, set your expectations. Why is this one so important? Well, just look outside, right? If you're in Iowa, look out the window and what do you see? Not a whole lot, right? No, Iowa, it doesn't, like I mentioned in the intro, we don't have the mountains or the canyons like they do out west. Everything is on a smaller scale. So when you go to a state park in Iowa, what you'll usually find is a lake, some rolling hills, some prairie, some forests, and that's about it. And I'll be the first to admit that I have been very disappointed with going to some of the state parks because at some point they all start to look the same. And then I start comparing them to parks out west, and I get in this cycle where I'm just not grateful for what Iowa does have to offer. So if you're going hiking in Iowa, the goal, you really have to keep your expectations level because it's an unfair comparison to compare a park out west to Iowa. If you were to just compare a national park to any park here in Iowa, it won't compare. A couple years ago, I was at Yellowstone, and Yellowstone, oh my goodness, it was an incredible experience, but I can't believe the number of people that were there. There were so many people, crowds everywhere, and it ruined some of the aspects of the park. But here in Iowa, you rarely ever have that. Occasionally, if you go to Ledges, that's usually the most busiest park here in Iowa just because it's one of the most unique, but I'll tell you, it's not the best park. I've got a list coming out. So moderate your expectations. Don't expect anything like you would out west, and you'll start to appreciate Iowa for what it is. Point 2 is only hiking on the in-season. What do I mean by this? Well, most people who live here in Iowa, they'll say, I love hiking, and they only hike in the summer and maybe the fall, and that's it. And I get it, that's what most people do. But they're missing one of the best times to go hiking, and that's the winter. Now I get it, most people, especially here in Iowa, don't like the winter. There's not much to do when it's cold outside. We don't have a lot of options when it comes to winter activities like skiing or snowboarding. So most Iowans just stay cooped up in home, and that's about it. But let me tell you, hiking in the wintertime is so much fun. It's one of my favorite times to go hiking. You see, on a nice cold winter day when it's right after a fresh snowfall, going to a state park is one of the most magical experiences you can get, especially after a snowfall, because most people are sitting at home not doing anything. And when you arrive at the park, you're usually the only person there. And you get to be the first person to put your mark on the trail. And with the snow coming down, everything is super quiet and calm. And it's one of the most exciting times to visit a state park. Not only for those reasons, but also the fact that everything looks different. The whole park has a slightly different look than when it does during the summer or spring. And I'll admit one thing when it comes to winter hiking. If you're not prepared, you're not going to enjoy the experience. I'll admit that hands down, right? If you show up at the park and you don't have a good coat, you don't have a good pair of shoes, and you're just kind of hiking and you're freezing, that's not going to be fun. So really the goal here is if you go winter hiking, make sure you have a good coat, maybe bring layers, make sure you bring a hat and gloves and some good shoes, and maybe you bring a warm drink. I love doing that. I'll keep that in my car, do the trail, and I know my drink is waiting for me back at the car, and that makes the trip just so much more fun. So give winter hiking a try. It's a lot of fun, and I think you'll enjoy it. Point 2 is camping. Now, if you would have asked me a couple years ago, Zach, what do you think of camping? I would have told you, no way. I'm not a fan of sleeping out in the woods with a bunch of bugs and, on a hot summer night. That sounds like no fun. But I changed my mind. Why did I change my mind? Well, this happened when I went to Yellowstone. I was trying to be super cheap, and I don't like spending money on hotels. And when I was going out west to Yellowstone, I found that the cheapest option was to go camping. Now, my brother had a tent and some gear that I borrowed, and so I went out there and camped a couple of nights, and I realized this is a lot more fun than I actually realized. No, I get it. You're out west. Everything's a lot more epic and amazing. But I came home later that year, and I said, I'm going to give camping a try. So last year, I started camping at different state parks, and this worked out really well because a lot of the state parks that I was visiting were a couple hours away, so I could drive up on a Friday night, camp over the weekend, and enjoy the park. And something I didn't realize that I would actually enjoy more is getting to experience the park, not just during the day, but in the morning and the evening. Those are some of the best times to be at a park because you get to watch the park come alive in the morning, and at night you get to watch the little lightning bugs come out. You get to start a fire, cook a hot dog or two or some s'mores, and it's a lot of fun. So don't be like me and think camping isn't for everyone. Give it a try someday. Just keep an eye on the weather. The first day I went out was 92 degrees, and that was when I was sleeping at like 9 o'clock. That was miserable. But yeah, give it a try. And if you're, on a side note, I've got a video coming out explaining what gear that I use when I go camping. There's some things that I bought, some things that I didn't really use all that much. We'll be talking about that in a later video, so be on the lookout. The next tip, this is tip 4. I think this is tip 4, is to get a good pair of shoes. Now, you don't have to get anything fancy. All I recommend is get something that you don't care if it gets dirty. And my story here is I used to have these Vans mountain boots. I loved them. They looked really cool. But when I went hiking in them, I would get them really dirty and I ruined them. So they don't have to be anything fancy. Go run to Walmart or Target and get a good pair of tennis shoes that when you're on the trail and the trail gets wet and muddy, because it will. I've been on so many trails where the trail is just completely flooded.
Yeah.
So get a good pair of shoes so that when your trail does go south, you don't mind if your shoes get wet or dirty or even ruined. But if you're looking for a pair of boots, I use these boots by Salomon. These are the Salomon Outline Mid GTX hiking boot. I love these shoes. They've got really grip bottom, and I've had these for about 3 years. Put over 100 miles on them for sure. And they've been really good to me. They're waterproof, so when I'm on those wet trails, my feet aren't soaking wet. Would highly recommend that, something like that. I prefer a boot over a shoe just because I like the extra support, and also because when I'm in a wet zone, I don't have to worry about the water going into my shoe. But that's just a little tip of my own. So get a pair of shoes. Doesn't have to be something fancy like the Salomon, but you won't regret it. The last tip I have for you guys is to bring a hat. Why should you bring a hat? Well, let me tell you. I've been on some super sketchy trails where it's kind of swampy, there's lots of brush, and there's trees, and there's bugs everywhere. And I've seen ticks crawling up my legs, on my arms, and the worst thing you want is a bug to get in your hair, because they're a little more hidden and they're harder to pluck out. And so a hat becomes your first line of defense. Or at least I like to believe so. So a hat, yeah, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You could just have a ball cap that you wear. You could even get, if you want to be really fancy, get yourself a cowboy hat. Probably not for hiking, but any hat will do. The main idea is just to keep bugs out of your hair, because when you're in the forest and under a bunch of trees, bugs like to drop on you or crawl on the tall grass because it's cooler there and it's wet. So get yourself a hat. Doesn't have to be anything fancy like my beautiful cowboy hat. It's just something to keep the bugs off your hair. And get some bug spray too, because that can't hurt as well. So, and with that, you guys, that's all I've got for you. That's 5 different things I've learned along my journey to visit every state park in Iowa. It's been a great 3 years, and I'm excited to see what the next 3 years look like, and hoping to get closer to my goal. We're at 55%, but we're going to be visiting some new parks this year. We'll be getting some footage of those parks, and we'll be releasing some more videos here soon. So keep an eye out for those. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'm told it helps the channel out. Let me know if there's some things that you guys have learned along the way, and we'll see you in the next video.